All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a special episode of The Fit Investor. So I'm your host, Cale Delaney, here with Brenna, her newly nicknamed Barbells. And our special guests today are Celia Cortes and Ariel Siegelman. And so this is a special episode where bringing them in, they are the founders of the Global Action Institute, which we're going to talk about here in a little bit more detail. And more importantly, we're going to talk about what they are doing in Israel and share some light on the realities and the truths of what is going on in Israel currently. And so we wanted to have this special episode. They just returned from a trip in Israel, actually distributing some supplies through the Global Action Institute. So we wanted to bring them on, get some firsthand experience and knowledge, and again, shed some light on what's going on. So welcome, Celia and Ariel, to the Fit Investor.
Thank you so much. We're so glad to be here with you and lovely to see your faces after, I don't know, a month or two of not seeing you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess just for our audience, we had met in Austin, Texas a couple months ago now, I guess, for the STR Growth Summit. And that's where I had learned about them and the Global Action Institute and what they're doing. And then, of course, we have what's happened between Israel and Hamas since then, and they're very active in what's going on there now through the Global Action Institute. Why don't you guys just start off and give us a little bit of a background on yourselves and the Global Action Institute, and we'll take it from there.
Sure. So Global Action Institute was formed out of our desire to reach more people and help more people in the world. My background is in investigations, interviews and interrogations. And I met my husband, who has a very specific IDF background. Tell us a little bit about that.
I was in a special unit in the Israel Defense Force, and Celia and I met at a security conference because what else do Israelis do other than high tech or security? So we met at a conference, and everything's been amazing since then.
It's true.
It's true. Actually true. Yeah, pretty amazing. We work together, a security consulting firm that we run together, and obviously Celia's got a more cerebral background than I do in terms of all the investigative side, and that takes a smart person. I'm more the kind of person that she just turns me in the right direction and says, run that way. And I do that. And as long as I go the direction that she tells me, then, man, we're successful.
So our security company has been successful. And as we found success in our lives, we have found ourselves being philanthropic people, and we were giving to organizations. And we realized that we're giving our money to organizations and we don't know where those funds are going. We don't know what they're doing with it. So we had an idea to create our own nonprofit organization that would allow us to direct the money exactly where it needs to go. We can utilize our friends' funds, bring that money together and send it somewhere that we know where it's going, and we can prove to our donors how it's being utilized.
I think through the different kinds of missions that we've been able to accomplish through the security agency that we run, we've done things all over the world. And so part of creating that nonprofit was really like, again, asking that question, okay, we're giving some of our own money to a certain cause. And we keep having this question come up. Okay, I'm not sure where that's really going to, and I don't know how good they are at getting the job done. And some places obviously are good, but what I do know is that we're good at getting the job done. And so to be able to take that same philosophy that we've been able to be successful in our business and utilize parallel worlds, utilize those same connections, those same capabilities, and go into some of the farthest reaches on planet Earth to get supplies and services into places where most people can't even get to. Mm-hmm. I feel like that's been pretty cool.
Absolutely. And it makes us unique because no one at Global Action Institute takes a salary. We are 100% volunteer based. And we have certain projects where 100% of donations go to our programs because we don't believe in all the overhead. So that's how Global Action Institute came to be.
To be fair, I also recognize that there are certain people that have to be paid. There's websites that have to be built. All that kind of stuff happens. And eventually we may get to a size that like we have to hire on salaried people. That may happen. But I think that it's part of our dedication. It's just that we want people to know that when whatever we're involved in it's not going to be 90% in salaries and 10% in doing good. It's like really focused on getting the mission accomplished and doing that in the best way possible. And really it's interesting because I think that it goes back to things that we learn from investments. when we're investing in goodness in the world, right? Like we know that if I give $1 and I want to know that this dollar is being invested in a way that's helping the world, so we're running the nonprofit like an investment.
Right.
So
Yeah.
from a business standpoint, I have a few questions. So let's say like you're the people that donate to Global Action Institute, do you guys just do an update newsletter kind of thing of what you're doing with the funds per year, since it just varies basically on what's happening in the world?
Sure. So we actually have a few different methods. We've got an email list that we send out our donors, their updates, but we also like to do things a little bit the old-fashioned way. So everyone who's donated to our campaign since October 7th has received a personal letter in the mail with a photo page that has a bunch of pictures put together of what we've been doing, what their donations are helping us to procure and deliver to people. So we try to keep everybody informed, not just on the internet, but on paper, in their hands, so they can see what it is that we're doing.
Yeah, and I will say also that I feel like we might be a little bit weak on
marketing.
On the marketing side, because we're so heavily involved in just doing the job.
Yeah.
I almost laugh about how the day that we start having beautiful marketing is like when we're not actually doing anything, because now we have time to put something into marketing. We're out there in the field and it's, oh yeah, did you remember to take a picture of all the cool things we're doing? No, I was carrying boxes. I couldn't have my phone in my hand at the same time.
The marketing picture has like a thumb in the picture because you're
Yes.
like,
yeah, exactly. We're like,
you'll see some of those. If you go to our Global Action Institute's social media, you will see some of those very raw photos of the things that we tried to capture for everyone.
Yeah.
Here's
Yeah.
the thing, there's so many edited photos out there of just placement and somebody crying in the picture, and which I'm sure you can get that unedited, but I feel like there's so much fake stuff out there these days. I think it's really refreshing just to see unedited raw footage. Another question I had was, because I'm not intelligent when it comes to nonprofit and the non-for-profit. How did you go about doing your research when you opened up the company? Is it a non-for-profit, or can you explain that?
Sure. Yeah. So we are a non-for-profit. We are a 501c3 charity, and we can't pretend to know all the ins and outs of it. We have an amazing attorney who helped us get everything set up, but it was a lot of paperwork and a lot of explanation for the IRS to be satisfied with what it was that we were going to do, what our programs were going to be, who we were going to serve. So we went through the 501c3 process and got issued that designation by the IRS in May of 2020.
Okay.
Wow. And how long do you think that took you to do that, like from the start to finish?
It was about 6 months. From start to approval was about 6 months.
Yeah. Okay.
Which might be actually fast in that world. I've heard about people spending a lot longer than that trying to get.
Sure. Again, we had a wonderful attorney who knew
Yeah.
exactly what to do, helped us with the documentation, and that's why it was a little bit faster.
That's awesome.
Now, before we get into what you guys are doing currently with the war in Israel, but can you give us some examples, perhaps, of some of the projects that you have done? And the reason I wanted to share that is because I know when we were talking out in Austin, I think you had shared a couple of examples, and one of the things that had turned on the light bulb for me was in talking about your guys' efficiencies, really, because we can give money personally to try to do things or to other organizations and things like that, but our dollar may not go as far in those avenues as if we partner with somebody like the Global Action Institute, where you do have connections, you do have efficiencies in these areas, you can make those dollars go a lot further, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. That's 100% true. A lot of organizations spend money trying to figure out how to help, and that makes it difficult because the donor's dollar doesn't go as far. Some of the projects that we've gotten involved in, we do self-defense and security classes for women. We are dedicated to helping people feel safer and more secure all around the world. So helping women to feel safe and secure and to be able to protect their families was near and dear to my heart. And fortunately, I had the support of my husband, Ariel, on that.
And I'll clarify, I'm less interested in people feeling safe. I'm more interested in them being safe. So
absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But when we talk about safety and security, it's not just about that. We talk about food safety and water safety. So we've sponsored community gardens in inner cities where they're in a food desert. They've got to drive 5 or 6 miles to the nearest grocery store, and many people don't have cars. So we sponsor community gardens where people get together, they build a garden, they have a list of who's going to tend that garden, and then they have enough produce to feed their community. And that's important to us. Providing clean water to areas that don't have clean water. We've provided emergency vehicles to remote communities where someone gets hurt, an ambulance can't make it out to where they are. So we provided them with an off-road style emergency vehicle. What are some other things you can remember?
Now, is that in different countries or here or both or?
Both, yeah. So we operate here. The gardens are all here in the United States. The emergency vehicles, those have happened overseas. The self-defense classes have happened in both overseas and here in Atlanta, which is where we're based. We also sponsor transition camps for soldiers who are coming back from the front lines. We should all know that when you see the atrocities of war, it's very difficult to just come home. So we sponsor transition camps where the soldiers can go somewhere between leaving the front lines and getting home that will help them be better acclimated when they get home. They'll be better fathers, they'll be better citizens in their society. So while we say safety and security, we have a very wide umbrella of the things that we like to get involved in and help with.
And I know you guys do a lot with like school security as well, right? To kind of bring
Absolutely. That's it.
That we see a lot, unfortunately, in the US here with the school shooting. So maybe you can share a little bit on that as well.
Yeah, I mentioned before that the for-profit business helps the nonprofit quite a bit too. So, and they support each other. We started to see that while we have a lot of the work that we do is with famous people or high net worth families or with corporations and organizations that, let's say, have a good amount of funding. But then a school might come to us and they need services the same as anybody else, and they may not have that funding, or a church or whatever else. So community organizations. So we've developed a very robust program that actually we even wrote a book on school security. So it like simplifies some complicated models and those sorts of things. We're able to be, if a school comes to us and says, hey, we really need security, I don't ever want to turn them away. Right. And so even if they don't have a budget, we can create a scholarship, so to speak, that we can make sure that they get what they need through people helping, obviously, through the donations, and they get what they need, and kids are safer. And I think that's very important for the whole country to have that outlook that like we got to get this in place. We got to make sure that school security is a priority, church security is a priority, any soft target, any community institution is a priority.
Right. And put you on the spot a little bit, but are there like any, when we talk about the community organizations, the schools in particular, perhaps, are there any just like basic tips or things that schools should know, that simple things that they can do to enhance their safety today?
For sure. I would say that even if you can just develop an outlook of security, one of the things that we come up against a lot is as a community institution, it's not just schools, but I think the churches deal with this a lot. I think that community centers deal with this a lot. I think that typically those sorts of institutions are run by really nice people, and that's good. But really nice people have an attitude of, we want everybody to feel welcome. Right. And then therefore they feel like security is not something that, it doesn't feel good to talk about security because it's an erroneous assumption that security means we don't welcome people. So the way that I think about it is that you should really have a philosophy in your institution, like you probably do in your home, where I want you guys to all feel welcome in my home if I invite you into my home. And I have a way to make sure that you don't come into my home unless I welcome you in. It's called a locked door. There's just simple things like that, but it's not the lock on the door as much as it's the philosophy of knowing that I have an ability to control the environment in my home. Mm-hmm. I also have an ability that if I did invite you into my home and you started causing problems, so I have certain things in place that I can help get you out of my home. So to think about security in that way, I think is really important. And then how you do it and what kind of equipment you use and the kind of training that you have, as long as you realize that your school it should be treated like your home. Control the environment. It's okay. And you can still have a welcoming environment and still be in control. That's okay.
Right. Yeah. And it reminds me, I was just thinking of this example of not the church I go to now, but several years ago, I was going to a very small church locally here. And there was an older gentleman who always sat up front, and he always had like two like Bible cases. And I always wondered, I was like, why? I was like, okay.
Really religious.
Yeah. I was like, okay, got two, maybe are different translations. I don't know.
Right.
And so I asked him one day, and he's, oh yeah, this one's my gun. I was like, oh, okay.
You're really going to teach us the New Testament in a whole new way.
Right.
And I was like, unfortunately, as we're about to get into, it's a sad state of affairs that we're in this world today, that we even have to think about these things in a church and in a school and that type of thing. But at the same time, we have to be prudent and diligent. And what you guys are doing is exactly teaching people exactly that. We have to be prudent and we have to be diligent. I hate the fact that we have to have security officers during a church service. It just,
it is a sad state. It is a sad state of affairs, especially have this. I don't know. I know I do. I have a feeling like, come on, it's 2023.
Right.
It's almost 2024. Aren't we advanced enough in our development as human beings on planet Earth? And we have all this amazing science, and we can talk to each other over computer screens, for God's sakes. But we can't get along?
Yeah.
Wow.
And I like that you guys have that graceful way of talking about it and still talking about it, because people, they don't talk about it because they're like, oh, we don't want to ruffle any feathers and we don't want to be a political stance or whatever it is. But the thing is, bottom line, it's not a political stance. Preserving life, like literally preserving life. Everybody's so concerned about the wildlife and preserving wildlife, but then when it comes to humans, we're a different nature because we're the smartest. We're supposed to be the smartest being on this planet, and so we're more advanced. And so I just don't see the stigma behind talking about it, because if you don't talk about it, that's when problems happen. And I think that's a big reason why so many issues have occurred, because people just don't talk about it.
Yeah,
I agree.
And maybe this kind of transition us into talking about what you guys are doing in Israel and what's really going on there. But I just think nowadays more than ever, in this quote unquote woke culture that we're in, this politically correct culture, this universal or not universal, but everybody's personal truth culture, that now more than ever is when we have to be able to stand for something. That old cliche or phrase, if we don't stand for something, we fall for anything. And frankly, that is what is going on in today's society. We become so weak and subject to following the whims of social media and fake news that nobody stands for anything. Nobody wants to get into any type of controversy. Everybody wants to be politically correct. Everybody wants to be Mr. or Mrs. Acceptance and not stand for the truth. And as we get into our conversation, like we chatted offline, I'm more than happy to get into the reality of things, controversy. Let's stir things up.
I'm happy to talk about anything.
With that, maybe just share, I know you just did a trip through the Global Action Institute to Israel. Maybe just share what you guys have going on through Global Action Institute currently. And then from there, let's dive into what's happening over there.
Yeah.
So let's start on October 7th.
I'd like to touch on one thing that you said before we get into that topic, because I think that it's an important introduction into kind of the way that we think about things, I believe. So you mentioned that in society, there's a lot of different kinds of conversations going on right now. And one of the big themes is there is no truth, and it's all like my truth and the way I feel is true. And so first of all, I'd like to clarify that is completely illogical, because if there's no such thing as truth, then is that true?
Right.
And so if that's true, then it negates the argument altogether. We know that there's such thing as truth. Now, truth is something that exists outside of myself.
Right.
What's inside of myself is my own feelings, and that the definition of enlightenment actually is being able to make sure that what's inside of myself coincides with what's true, what's out there. And that I actually am in line, like my perception of reality is reality. That would be my definition of enlightenment. So when I look at the situation with Israel right now, and it's really not right now, it just happens to be a big topic, but it's been going on for a long time.
Right.
I think that one of the greatest difficulties is that we're really in a battle between those two philosophies. Is it a philosophy of it's about how I feel, or is it a philosophy of what's true? And I think that unless we're able to actually look at what's true and we're willing to really identify what the facts are, facts of history, facts on the ground, if we can't look at the facts, then peace is absolutely impossible. You can't base peace on like me yelling and screaming at you. Obviously, I'm a biased party, but I think everybody's a biased party. But what does bias mean? Bias means that I have an emotional thing that says that I want something to be true. I think that's what a bias is. But I would like to believe that more than anything, I want to know what's true. I would like to believe that my friends are right, but I definitely am committed to the truth. And if my friends are wrong and if I'm wrong, I know that I'm the kind of person that if I'm wrong and I can identify that, then I try to change it. So that to me is the beginning of like where we're coming from. Now, I spent a lot of time in Israel. I served in the military there. Part of the reason I chose to serve in the military there is because I saw the facts on the ground, and I'm convinced that nobody's perfect, nobody's without any faults. However, overall, Israel has a righteous stance in this conflict. And the Israeli government, again, while it's not without fault, it's a truthful government. Like when they tell you this rocket was shot from this place and landed on that spot, you can take that to the bank. Mm-hmm. And even when we make a mistake, even when we're at fault, and I say we, right? I was part of the system. Even when we're at fault, we hang our heads and we say, yeah, we did that. That was our rocket. Our rocket hit that place. Now, what you can also look at is that Hamas, you can't trust anything they say. They'll even tell you the truth. They're very truthful in how they lie. They're like, yeah, everything we tell you is for propaganda purposes. Everything we're doing is for furthering our cause. We don't even want to take care of the Palestinian people. Killing innocent people on both sides furthers our cause.
Mm-hmm. And they'll tell you.
And they'll say that flat out. I feel like it's really an amazing thing to me because we're at a time period where I don't know that it's almost a gift, right? I don't know that I've ever seen good and evil in human beings be so clearly defined.
Right.
Like usually when we're dealing with a bad person, a criminal or something like that, we have a situation where it's like, gosh, I don't know. The guy really is, he does this good thing and that good thing. And maybe he really is a good guy who's just directed his energy in the wrong place. This is different. You cannot, I don't know how people can argue that like cutting the heads off of babies is a good thing, is a justified thing. Right. Now, I will tell you, hurting a child, I don't care who they are, if a Palestinian child is hurt, that pains me and I don't want that to happen.
Right.
And a lot of what we see right now, and we'll get into our trip to Israel, but a lot of what we see right now is almost an entire generation of people who are getting their news from TikTok. They're getting their news in these short little snippets from these talking heads that know nothing about the world. They've never been to the Middle East. They've never been to Israel. They've never studied the Israeli history with that region. Mm-hmm. But yet, all of a sudden, everyone's an expert on the Middle East. Right. We are battling that right now. And having conversations like this is going to help just a little bit. And we have to have these open conversations. We'll talk a little bit about how we came to be in Israel.
Yeah.
Really quick before you get on that, because Kale got me pumped up when he was like, we're going to talk about whatever we feel. So I noticed, I follow you guys on Facebook, and huge believer in if somebody is being hurt or killed for any reason, then it's our duty as supporters or whomever, if we have the ability and the means to go and support them and help them, then we should. And I'm just going to call it out because I saw a post that you guys posted, and I saw somebody, I don't know who it was, posted, was like, if you hear my dogs in the background, I'm sorry. Gun violence is not the answer and blah, blah, blah. Let me tell you guys, it's not about gun violence. that are listening. It's about preserving life. And if the only way that you can preserve innocent lives is to retaliate with ammunition, because that's literally the only way we can retaliate against these people in Hamas, then we need to do it for the good of the people. It's not, oh, that's never the answer. Sometimes it is the answer.
Mm-hmm.
And if you just, what would you do if somebody came into your house and shot your child? God forbid. But would you just sit back and be like, gun violence is not the answer, so I'm just going to let them do it? No, you wouldn't. And I just think that people see these media outlets and they could sit back in their chair in their sweatpants and say, oh, I would do this. No, you wouldn't, because you're sitting on the couch in your sweatpants. If you did, you'd be getting up and doing something about it. And even with TikTok, it's not just TikTok. It is all the media outlets. Please ask yourselves, when you're watching the news, what benefit do they have? Media is always for gain, for some type of monetary purpose on their end, or whatever political view they want to throw out at you guys. And so you really need to talk to people out there that are in the streets, just like Celia and Ariel. And you can't just believe what you hear on the news. So I'm like getting off my high horse, but I just needed the viewers to hear that. And yeah, there we go.
I think, sorry, go on.
Yeah, I was just going to say, not only that, it's just how quickly we forget history. It's honestly, it's pretty incredible in that today's day and age with, and maybe it's a result of this, of there's so much information out there, right? That I think our attention span on things have shrunk just incredibly. And just one of the things to highlight that is, okay, 9/11, all right? That was not that long ago. So if we think back to what happened in America and the American mentality after that, it was an all hell is going to break loose against the Taliban, right? And there was nobody in the US that was going to say, oh, maybe we shouldn't, maybe they're misunderstood, maybe this or that. It was, oh, hell no, we're going over there and we're destroying them. Now, with what's going on in Israel, and I forget the exact numbers, but I think it was, if you look at it on a ratio perspective, it was the same as if, I think it was like 26,000 people had died, on 9/11, right?
I think even more than that.
We're up to 50,000. If we're equating population, we're up to the equivalent of 50,000 Americans killed on 9/11.
So yeah, so there we go. So just I want to bring that up, to bring some perspective, and for us to remember a little bit of something very recent that is correlates a lot with what's happening now, to give a little perspective on that and how we should understand things. But yeah, I think that's just a challenge that we have today, is that we forget history so quickly. And again, what happens? We repeat.
We've also, and it's not maybe just a forgetting of history, but it's almost like the luxury of living in such an opulent society like the United States. And with all the complaints that I hear being made of, oh, it's this terrible place. And you hear that sometimes, right? And I'm like, man, I've worked in about 50 countries in the world, and most of them are pretty rough. America's amazing. It's an amazing life, and it's beautiful. And you got even a poor person has a TV and one car and $1,000. So to have the luxury to live in such a developed society where mostly things are pretty nice, I think that there's this level of theory that we operate from. And so it becomes almost impossible for people to put themselves into the shoes of another person on the other side of the world who's dealing with a culture that most of us can't even fathom.
Right.
There is nothing I can't explain it to you. In fact, it makes perfect sense for people to have a lot of these questions, by the way. So my wife, when we first got together, she would ask me the same kind of question. She was like, I don't understand, why in Israel do they have checkpoints? Isn't that mean that you make people go through checkpoints and you look in their trunk and you check their bags? And that's mean, isn't it? Why do you do that to that population? And I said, you know what? I'm not going to explain it to you. We're going to take a trip to Israel, and I'm going to take you to work. I got friends in the military. I got friends in the security services. We're going to go to work with them, and you're going to see what we deal with on a daily basis to keep regular people going about their regular days, eating their breakfast, eating their lunch, eating their dinner, watching TV, all the things that we get to do on a regular basis. And maybe it sounds cliche that like somebody's out there making sure that we all get to live this life, this easy life, but it's true. It's not cliche. It is absolutely true. And so she and I went to work with one of my friends out there, and he thought, oh, you guys are coming to visit me? I'll take time off of work. I was like, we're going to work with you. And so here we are in a security vehicle that has 4 or 5 different radios in it. He's got I show up, he hands me a rifle. And we go to work with him, and all day long and all night long, it's one call after another. And we go to the scene of one shooting after another shooting, one bombing after another bombing, things that are shocking that most people don't see. And so she comes out and she's, oh my God.
I finally understood what they were up against, what the Jewish population was up against, what the Israelis were up against. Because not just Jews, right? There are Arabs that live in Israel who are happy and safe and living a good life there. It's the population on the borders that are a constant threat. And I did not understand that initially, but after going there and seeing that and going to the scene where a soldier waiting for a bus to go home to his wife and kids was shot just for being in uniform, your perspective really changes. You really have a different understanding. And in our recent trip to Israel, the 20-year-old daughter of a friend of ours was killed by a 16-year-old Palestinian boy. Mm-hmm. He stabbed her because she was in a uniform, standing there protecting tourists and Jews and Christians and Arabs. And she wasn't doing anything. She wasn't hurting anyone. She was standing guard, and she was killed for nothing. So we have to recognize that there's a cultural concern that we all need to be aware of.
And I think you go back to something that you had mentioned previously, Ariel, in that Hamas doesn't care. Let's just put it frankly. Hamas will do, like you said, whatever they can do to further their cause, which is to destroy the Israeli state, destroy Jews from the face of the earth. Oh, and let's not forget, they want to destroy America too. That's
right.
People don't value life at all, like literal life. They don't care whether it is an infant or whether it is somebody's sister or cousin or what have you.
Can I actually let me read something that Hamas actually said.
Yeah.
This is them. I'm just going to say it in their words. You don't have to trust me, trust them.
Right.
Quote, "We succeeded in putting the Palestinian issue back on the table. And now no one in the region is experiencing calm. I hope that the state of war with Israel will become permanent on all borders, and that the Arab world will stand with us. Hamas's goal is not to run Gaza and to bring it water and electricity and such. We are called a nation of martyrs, and we are proud to sacrifice martyrs. This battle did not seek to improve the situation in Gaza. This battle is to completely overthrow the situation."
Yeah.
That was said to the New York Times by Khalil al-Hayya, who is a spokesperson for Hamas.
Right. Yeah.
And Hezbollah the same day, by the way, said, "We will perform genocide when we cross the Israeli northern border." Do we just not trust these people? Have some respect for them. You know what I mean? Like, why don't we just stop our narcissism and trust that they do believe what they say and that they do not want what we want?
Right.
There's this concept of, oh, everybody really deep down is a nice person.
No.
They all want what we want. That's the most narcissistic way of looking at the world possible.
Yeah.
Right.
And they speak it in their own words, not just to the New York Times. There are videos out there. They wore GoPros during the massacre so that they could show what they did to the world. And yet people are marching in the street wearing Hamas headbands and waving Al-Qaeda and ISIS flags. What is happening in our nation and around the world that people are supporting this organization and what happened in any way? It's mind-blowing.
It is. It really is. It really is. And one of the things that are one of the not argument, I guess one of just the things I've heard in objections to what Israel is doing, or not specific to this conflict, but just between the Israelis and Palestinians, is that, okay, why doesn't Israel want to help out the people in the Gaza Strip? Why don't they want to make it, easier for them economically, right? I'll let you jump in here. I can see you ready to jump out of your seat there. But the answer that I had heard, and this was on another podcast here, was that, look, and this was a gentleman from Israel saying, look, it's not that we don't want to, it's just that every time we try to, Hamas takes that as an opportunity to further their goal. They plant sleeper agents inside Israel. And so that's going back to your checkpoints and stuff like that. That's why we have to be so cautious, because we never know. Unfortunately, we never know if a Palestinian or an Arab in Israel is somebody we can trust or we can't. And that correct me if I'm wrong, that's something that, again, I heard third party here, but it put things in perspective for me a little bit.
Yeah, man. I would say, by and large, the Israeli population is really a traumatized population from experiences over and over again, that they're really a sweet people. And if you ask, on October 6th, if you ask any Israeli, and I know that there's people out there who are going to say, I found a guy who's really right-wing extremist. Oh boy, was he. Okay, generally speaking, you ask the Israeli, what do you want? And they would say peace. Right. And if you just look at the rallies right now, just look at what's going on and take your feelings out of it. You look at the people who are marching for Israel. You look at the people who are waving flags, and they're singing songs, and they're like praying to God and singing Hatikva. Hatikva means hope. It's the Israeli national anthem. Our hope for thousands of years to get back to our homeland and please God to have a relationship with our Creator and a relationship with our homeland, and peace and harmony in the world. And what do you see in the other protests?
The pro-Palestinian movements.
Kill, murder, rape, pillage. What? Who's the good guy and who's the bad guy? You tell me.
Yeah, you can just look at what's happening. And one of the things that's frustrating for us also is that because we were there and we saw boots on the ground what was going on, and we talked to people there, you know, the videos that aren't making it on TikTok, the videos of the Israeli tanks that are lined up on the humanitarian corridor as they're protecting the Palestinian civilians from being shot by Hamas. Because no one wants to acknowledge that Hamas does not want the Palestinians to leave from northern Gaza and make their way south, because they want to be able to say, oh, look how many people Israel killed. So Israeli tanks are lined up on the side of the roads protecting them so that Hamas can't shoot them as they're trying to evacuate.
Let's clarify real quick that what that means is that I would say in some ways that we are not a moral army. And that might be shocking for people to hear, but I'm going to say it again. Maybe we're not a moral army, because what that means is that we are putting my own brothers and sisters at risk to protect the enemy civilians. And I believe that my life, if my country has to go to war, I would like to believe that if the United States went to war, that we would protect our own soldiers above the lives of like our own people. Our own American people, soldiers or not, we protect them over the lives of other people. But right now, the Israelis are protecting the enemy civilians more than their own soldiers. And we're putting them out in the field to be subject to sniper fire and bombings and rocket fire so that they can protect those people who are deemed as innocent. Is that right? I don't know. I don't know how to gauge that exactly, but that's the truth. And so to go back to what you asked in terms of why aren't the Israelis helping these people? First of all, why should I help them? They wanted their own autonomy. We left. I was there. I was part of it. We left the Gaza Strip in 2005. I, with my own hands, was part of that. And so now they had their own autonomy. What did they do with it? What did they do with it? They had more. Did you know that more money has poured into the Gaza Strip than what it took to rebuild all of Europe after World War II? And what did they build? They built tunnels and they built rockets. They didn't build hospitals. The hospitals they have were built by somebody else, mostly by Israel. They didn't build sewer systems. The sewer systems that exist there were built by Israel. Israel gives them free water, free electricity, just so they can be like, please, maybe if one day you have nice stuff, you'll decide to be nice people. We let them into Israel proper with work permits. Why? because we've been living by this Western philosophy of help them make money, and then they'll become reasonable.
Right.
They'll have something to lose, and then they won't want to fight with you. BS. What we found is that we tricked ourselves. They never said that they were going to do that. They said, let us in. We're going to get maps of your houses, and we're going to use that to come kill you. And you know what? They did.
That's exactly what they did
They
on
did.
October 7th.
They knew the names of children in people's families.
They knew who had dogs and which dogs were aggressive and which dogs were friendly.
Right.
They knew who had firearms. They went in under their work permits and they collected intelligence to be able to slaughter the very people that were paying them so that they could feed their children.
So why don't we help the Palestinians? First of all, we do. And they use it to kill us.
Yeah.
They use our goodwill to kill us. And that's the biggest problem, is that they know us better than we know ourselves even, but certainly better than we know them. They know that we're good people. They know that we're good. And the reason that I know that is because they would not have the strategies that they have if they didn't know it.
And this is why it's such like this. Any of these conflicts, when we get between the Arab nations and Israel, are so tricky because they are not your common, I hate to use the word common, but your common type of warfare, right?
Mm-hmm.
These are ideological and more importantly, these are spiritual wars that are going on. And that's why all the morals typically on the Arab side go out the window, right? And that's why they're okay with using citizens or civilians rather as shields. That's why it's okay to build up their military infrastructure in hospitals, right? That's why it's okay to send in sleeper agents on the goodwill of Israel, letting them in to gain intelligence and map out their attacks. This is spiritual warfare that's going on, and it makes this so much different than so many wars that go on.
Yeah, we're not fighting a Western enemy. But I think that the United States, maybe in the West in general, we go to war and we have an idea of I'm playing chess.
Right.
There's
armies, certain rules of warfare, right?
There's rules, like the way you move your piece. It goes up 2 and over 3. And that's not what we're playing. We're playing with a different culture. And the culture that we're dealing with is not like us. And we make decisions often almost like we're looking in a mirror and we're saying, if I do this, if someone did this to me, I would do this in return.
Right.
And we're dealing with people who operate differently. And like you said, it's a religious war. It's a spiritual war. And we keep telling ourselves that, oh, no, this is not a religious war. This is, oh, no, this is. And meanwhile, they say,
yes,
guys, this is a religious war. I just want you to know it's a religious war. Why are we using hospitals? We've asked them that. When we capture them, we ask them, why are you using hospitals? And they're like, what do you mean? Because you have a problem bombing hospitals. Obviously, we're going to use a hospital.
Yeah.
Hospitals and schools.
Yeah.
And that was one of my first experiences over there as well. When we were there, the rocket was launched from a school. And then rocket fire was returned to where the original rocket came from. And they blew up the school. And then they're freaking out that, oh, Israel blew up a school. Don't launch the rockets from school.
Gosh. Yeah, it's disgusting. No other word to really put it.
It's just the lack of intelligence of the normal community. They don't see, it's not like war, technically, like the rules. There are no rules. These people have no rules, no boundaries. Even the quote that you guys just said, that they said, is basically like, we're going to sacrifice ourselves too. They literally care for nobody's lives, even themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And it's dangerous. And I can't even begin to think or explain of going out on the street and taking my dogs out to walk after this Zoom call or whatever. And you can't even do that in Israel. You can't even go on the street because you're afraid, okay, this greenish color I'm wearing, would they think that I'm part of the military and like I just get killed when I go right out on the street? Like you just can't even live, like literally live. And I think from the Holocaust and all of this stuff, everybody has learned about it, right, through history. So they know it was a bad time. They can empathize with it. There's movies out there about it. But then when it's going on in real life, it's, oh, the media says this, that it's not that bad, so it must not be. And people aren't educating themselves. And I think if they literally just took the time and sat down and educated themselves on the true facts, then people would be more empathetic and understand what's really going on. But nobody will do that these days. It's just they just see what they want to on TikTok or the news, and then that's all they gather, and then they think that they know the whole picture.
That's right.
It's interesting. We live in an age that we have access to more information and more facts than about more subjects than we've ever had ever in the history of humankind.
Mhm.
And yet we have less ability to think than maybe ever before.
Right.
It's incredible.
Yeah, we allow other people to feed our thoughts. We allow short snippets of videos that we're watching on our phones feed us and educate us, and we think that we know because, oh, I saw this guy who told me what the history was, and wow, that must be true.
And
It's scary.
And somebody might say the same thing about what we're saying right now. I'm sure they will.
But the difference here is boots on the ground experience, right? Ariel was part of the system. He was in the military. He was there when they left Gaza. He was there, boots on the ground. I've been to Israel multiple times where I see with my own eyes.
Mhm.
I was doubtful in the beginning, like, what's going on with this? And now I understand. And I think that anyone who is doubtful and it's like, oh, these Israelis they're terrible, just go visit. Go visit and go to the border. Would you live there? Would you be interested in living there? They would not.
Right.
And you've got all these people marching and for Hamas and free Palestine. If you're in the LGBTQ community and you go to Palestine, I can guarantee your fate, and it's not pretty.
Right.
So there are uneducated people fighting for something that they know nothing about, and it's very disturbing.
Right. Yeah. It coincides with the support that socialism and communism is getting in this nation as well, and frankly around the world. But it's the same thing. It blows my mind still. We have people supporting a communistic society for America. They have no clue what that even means. They think it just means that we get free stuff. Yeah, okay.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
I want my ice cream.
So
Right.
really quick for the history behind it, I know like we need to talk about a lot of other things, but behind the history of like you said you started there, was it 2005 you started in the military there, or?
No, I was already in the military for a while. I started the military in 2003.
And then are you originally from there?
But that's my heritage. That's where my family's from. And I was born in the United States. I grew up here. I went back to Israel when I was 21 and I joined the army. I spent 11 years there. And I plan, man, we're going to go back too. And we're going to start our life there. And we're here temporarily. But yeah, I spent 11 years there.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
And
then when you go, because I know flights and stuff, like you can't even get over there right now, basically, if you're a normal citizen or civilian. So how did you
there are some most flights are not going right now. The Israeli Airlines El Al is flying. Okay. If you guys want to go, I can work it out.
I wouldn't say just go on your own. Please
pack us in one of your boxes and ship us in.
Yeah,
we got some extra helmets. We'll get you set up.
And actually, we were there in 2 weeks ago, last week, we were there, and when you're in the middle of the country, you don't feel unsafe. People are going about their lives as usual. Right. Kids are going to school. People are out and about the grocery store. Yeah. It's as you near the borders that the tension rises.
Yeah. Right. And there's tension because I think that it's also been a wake-up call that pre-October 7th was this feeling within the country that we're an island that exists in a bad neighborhood. And we've got good walls and good fences and really good technology. We've got a strong army and everything's okay. We can manage this problem. And those people over there say they want to come kill us. They can't get to us though, so everything's fine.
Right.
And this was a wake-up call because it was like, oh, if the batteries go dead, or if the electricity goes off, or if the internet drops, or if all three of those things happen at the same time, then what do you got? And if those people are really dedicated to destroying you, then so now all of a sudden we have this new realization that, oh, we are vulnerable and we need to pay attention to that. And we need to manage a new kind of problem, a new philosophy. So there is tension, but overall, I think that Israelis are good about waking up fast. Right. And they're good about making decisions quickly because they don't have time. The country, most people don't realize this. The country of Israel, in its widest part, is only about 30 miles wide. There are people who run races on foot that are longer than that. Like people go on bike rides every day that are longer than that. So if we're not paying attention, we'll get overrun real fast.
Yeah, honestly, it's amazing. And again, for not having been there, and like most people in America, it is very hard to put into perspective to think of, again, a small nation surrounded by literally enemies.
Evil.
Yes.
How
People
crazy.
who want to take you out.
How crazy is that?
Violently kill you. I mean, I think it goes back to what you were saying, Brenna, at the very beginning, where it's like, okay, there's this philosophy that there's never a time to use physical violence. And I think that's, again, it's a beautiful thing to philosophize about while you're sitting in your nice house, sipping your latte. But there's a big difference that is not morally equal for us to say that this person comes to kill, that person uses force to stop him. Those are not the same thing.
Right.
And I guarantee it, even the guy who's the most latte sipping, peace loving guy, if that kind of person came, they're going to want somebody like me or my guys next to them real fast. They're going to call us, and they're going to latch on to the legs of the big bad. What do they call it? Toxic masculinity. The most toxically masculine guy they can find. Right. Because that's who's going to save them. That person is going to save them. That person actually is like righteousness manifest. And when I'm a religious person, I believe that sometimes righteousness doesn't look all like flowers and rainbows. Sometimes righteousness is a strong, powerful, the angel Gabriel is never painted in pictures as like some weakling. He's got big muscles and a sword. And that's who you go to when you need righteousness done on earth.
Right. Yeah. No, absolutely. And to continue that theme or explore it a little bit more, I know we're getting towards the end here, but just to reiterate that theme, that again, from my perspective, it sounds like from your perspective, that this is truly a type of spiritual warfare, and that there is, frankly, I'm just going to say, there is, frankly, an evil force that has taken over the leadership of these Arab nations. There's no other way to say it. There is an evil force that has taken over, right? Satan's plan from the very beginning has been to destroy God's chosen people. That's been his plan from the very beginning. And
maybe just righteousness in general. I mean, it's goodness, righteousness, light versus darkness. It all sounds silly, but it's not. It's really real. Yeah,
absolutely. It is real. And we see, because this, if we go just further and much further back in history, this was not always the case. The relationships between the Arab and Israeli nations was not like this forever.
Man, we're cousins. And I want to be careful by the way also, because I don't want people to misunderstand what we're talking about here and start saying that, oh, these guys they're saying that all Arabs are evil.
No,
that's not what we're saying. There are Arab regimes, there are Arab leaders out there even who are like, wait a second, what's going on isn't right. This is really about good versus evil. And it doesn't matter what color your skin is or what religion you are, or if you're a Muslim and you know what good is and you know what evil is, then okay, we're on the same team.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, we do have to be careful. There are good Muslims out there. We know them.
Yeah.
Some of them came to the rally in DC to support the Jewish people. So we've got to be careful and understand that there is a differentiation between good Muslims and evil people who want to do evil things in the world.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And it happens to be that there are many Islamist organizations that we also can't be too PC and say that, oh, there's no bad Muslims.
No,
that's not true either.
That's why I wanted to point out that it's more often than not, it's the leaders of these organizations like Hamas, like Hezbollah, not necessarily all the Palestinian people or all the people living in the Gaza Strip. Right. It's the leadership. And to take it back to what you had brought up previously, Ariel, in terms of the financing and the funding, if Hamas, who's quote unquote running the Gaza Strip, was looking out for the people, which you clearly know they're not, you read their manifestos, right? Then all this funding would be used to help the people, obviously, right? And
they had plenty of it.
That I was like, trying to do the math in my head and then thinking like all the rockets that were shot on October 7th. And I heard some figure that like each rocket, and I don't know how accurate this is, like each rocket costs like $150,000. And there were what, up to 5,000 that were shot in one day?
Day one.
In like day one.
Where
Yeah.
the heck do they get this money? That's a lot of money. So
Yep.
how can a nation have all that and the people have nothing? Something doesn't add up. Something
No, it doesn't add up. It's funny. I saw one of my friends posted something and said, Hamas, whoever it is that's talking from there is saying, oh, we're running out of water, we're running out of medicine, we're running out of food. You know what they're not running out of? Rockets.
Yeah. Interesting.
The amount of money that they're receiving, Gaza is actually a beautiful place. It has a beautiful beach. It's got amazing potential. With the amount of money that they're receiving, Gaza could be a resort destination where people would from around the world would come for their beautiful palm trees and their amazing beach, and they've got great food.
Right.
But the leadership doesn't care about that. They don't actually care about the people. And again, listen to the people from Gaza. There are videos out there that are not getting publicized of women who are screaming about Hamas and how terrible they are and how they've ruined their lives. And what happens? They get slapped in the face or they get their mouths grabbed and pulled off camera. There's a recent one of an old man in the hospital who the reporter who's talking to him thinks that he's cursing the Israelis, but it turns out he's actually cursing Hamas for what they've done. And the second the reporter realizes it, he turns away from him and doesn't want to hear what he has to say anymore. The resources are being pumped in there and they're not going to what they're supposed to go to. And now we're in the situation that we're in.
Right. Yeah. So what, I guess to tie things up or bring things together, what can people do to, number one, try to filter through all the information or the media that's out there to try to really come to what is the truth? What would you guys suggest that people can do to really try to educate themselves and understand better as best as they can what the reality is and what's real and what's not?
Yeah, I think that maybe if you're really curious, there's a lot of original sources out there. Let's just be very clear. There's no such thing as a Palestinian. And that may be a shocking thing to say, but that term alone is a made-up word that was first used by when the Romans conquered the land in the year 70 AD. That land was called Judea and was known as the land of Israel. Israel was the 12 tribes of the Jews, the Israelites. And so why did they name it Palestina? Because they changed the name after they conquered the Jews, they changed the name to represent the original or the ancient enemies of the Jews. Remember a guy named Goliath from the Bible? He was a Philistine.
Right.
Yeah, so they called it Palestina. It was the Latin word for Philistines. So that's where the word first started. Now, it's like we have this whole lie of history that started in the year 1964 by a guy named Yasser Arafat, who was a good marketer. And he, at that point, decided, wait a second, we need to create a movement. We need to say that Arab resident of this area is synonymous with Palestine. And Palestine is this ancient, he invented history in 1964. And our biggest problem is that we started as Israelis and in the West in general. When we start using the words of the enemy, we've already lost. We start losing. So what do? How do you figure out the truth? Go back to original documents. Go check it out and see if I'm right. See if I made it up.
Yeah, look at history books as opposed to TikTok videos and Instagram videos. Go look at history books that were written long before social media and the internet existed. And it's there. If you choose to learn it, it's there for you to see.
Yeah, all the information's there. It's easy to find.
Right.
But that takes effort.
Right.
Yeah.
And if I may take it one step further, look into scripture.
Yes, that's
do a
right.
TikTok video of the actual document or scripture. Maybe people will actually read it. I don't know.
Yeah, there you go. Make it 60 seconds or shorter, and then people will believe it.
You have to pause to read it.
Yeah. And I really hope people listen to this. I really hope people can make an effort to educate themselves a bit and understand what the reality of things that are going on I just want to bring it back to what I started this with, and saying that now more than ever, again, is a time when we need to stand for something, and we need to stand for what is right. And from my perspective, standing with Israel is what is right. In my perspective, the scripture clearly tells us that. In Genesis, it tells us that when talking with Abraham, the father of the Jewish nation, I will bless those who stand with you, and I will curse those who curse you. And I think if we look at who has blessed or stood with Israel and who has stood against Israel throughout history, we see that repeated pattern of them being blessed or cursed. So
how do people get involved with the Global Action Institute? I know we can donate, but let's say people, if they can't donate monetarily, I know you said it's pretty much volunteer basis. Are there opportunities for people to get involved with you guys? How does that work?
Sure. So we have monetarily is most important right now, right? We just came back from a trip from Israel where we took 2,000 pounds of gear and supplies worth $300,000, not just for soldiers, but for women and children who had their homes burned to the ground. So we use volunteers to help gather the duffel bags that we took everything over with. We use volunteers to pack the boxes and label things. So
there was somebody volunteered to drive a truck up to New York to where we had to pick up the plane. And
they spent 16 hours on the road for us.
Yeah, and also connections. When people, maybe you don't have $1 to be able to give, but maybe you've got a company that can help with transport. Maybe people who have good connections we can get deals on good equipment. Maybe we're getting licenses through the Department of Commerce and the State Department to be able to transport different kinds of items. Those sorts of things, when there's a lawyer who's assisting us and donating her time. So those are all very meaningful contributions. And where people have, I think as a religious person, one of the ways I look at the world is I don't know why I had all the experiences I had, but there are certain things that happen with urgency like this, that all of a sudden I start seeing, oh, that's why I met that person 2 years ago. Now I know why.
So they can visit our website. It's GAIcares.org. They can learn more about us. Our social media is where we're most active. It's Global Action Institute on social media. There we post our photos and our videos of what we've done, of what we need, what we're looking for. And again, our mission is not just Israel right now. We've helped organizations all around the world. Kale, we're grateful to you for your $50,000 matched contribution. We're looking forward to working with you to help your orphanage in Tanzania that's close to your heart. So we're involved in a lot of things around the world, and we're happy to have as many volunteers and all the support that we can have.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And thank you guys for what you guys are doing. Thank you for founding the Global Action Institute, and thank you guys for standing strong in the midst of everything that's going on. And so we appreciate your guys' time and coming on here and sharing your perspectives and some truths. And I really appreciate that.
Absolutely, guys.
Thank you guys for having us. Brenna, Kale, it's great to see you. Thank you guys so much.
Absolutely. Ladies and gentlemen, we hope you enjoyed this special episode. So check out Global Action Institute, GAIcares.org, and please get involved. And we will see you guys another episode of The Fit Investor. Take care.